Welcome. We are continuing in the book of Kings. We are in Kings 2, Malachim 2, base, chapter 4. Okay, let's get our context again to keep track of the names. So we are now in mostly focusing on the kings of the northern kingdom of Israel. We'll get back to the kings of the southern kingdom of Judah in a moment. But the northern king, we talk about Achav, the evil Achav. He had a son named Achaziah, who died had a very short reign. He got hurt, he fell. The story we talked about, he went to the false prophets to get his answer, and he was told by Eliyahu he was going to die. All right, then we had his brother took over, also another son of Achav, named Yehoram. Okay, and we're going to focus on that right now, but you got to keep those names straight because, strangely enough, the next two kings in Judah have exactly the same names, Yehoram and Achaziah or Chaziyahu, but just they're switched the order. So the children of Yehoshaphat, we're going to see, is also going to be Achaziah and then Yehoram. So, but there's going to be Yehoram and then Achaziah. We'll see. We'll get to that. Right now, focus on the kings of Israel. Achav, the evil Achav. Achaziah, his son, died early. We're in now Yehoram. Yehoram is the next third, the other descendant of Achav, and he is now the king of the 10 tribes of Israel. Now, we said last time he is bad, as most of the kings of Israel are, but not as bad as his father Achav. In other words, we said that Achav, Ahab, as in English, Achav, he brought in not only the idolatry of Yerovam, which was the golden calves, which Yerovam did that to protect his place, that they wouldn't go to Judah and realize he's not the true king because it has to be from Judah. So he set up this idolatry, and there's claims that it was still part of the religion somehow, whatever, how he told people that, but that's what he sold. And but Achav brought in other idolatries of the Baal and the Asherah, and wanted to deny any connection to the Jewish heritage, which is very different. I know it sounds to us like the same, but it's very, very different in the sense that what Yerovam did was very, very terrible, but he was claiming this is some new form of Judaism, was still connected to that. Achav rejected that. This son of Achav is bad, but not as bad as Achav. He actually removes the foreign idolatry of the Baal and the Asherah, but he does leave the Golim, the golden calves, because he's got to protect his position also. Now, we're about to go in, and we're focusing now this last week, this week, and a little bit for next week also, on the miracles that Elisha did, the student of Eliyahu, Elisha. He did miracles. We say he did more than Eliyahu. We talk about 8, and Elisha did 16, and that really is it's a large part of this book of Malachim. As we said, this is really maybe more than anyone else. Elisha is the one that we talk about all these miracles he did. And just to reiterate one point we said last time, the reason why he has more than even his teacher, we said because of his quality of yearning. Sort of Tzadok Cohen says he yearned to have more. He said, I really want to connect to you. And that is like an endless part of a person. So if you know knowledge, you know a certain amount. But if you want to know knowledge, if you want to have certain things, that could be an endless amount because you know what you know, but you might just want an endless amount. So Elisha had that yearning, and therefore he gets double in that sense. He's able to do many, many miracles, as we're going to see. Now, I just want to say one more point about miracles. I mentioned it last time, but just to understand, it's always that the prophet is, yes, he's doing miracles, but the point is he's connected to Hashem in a way that what his will, either Hashem tells him he's going to do this, or sometimes the prophet can actually make things happen because of his relationship to Hashem, and that Hashem will fulfill the desire of the prophet. And that's what we're going to see right now, some amazing list of miracles that Elisha has done. Okay, so let us begin. Now, chapter 4. It begins by saying there was a woman, the wife of one of the prophets, and she came to scream and to complain to Elisha. Now, who is this woman? So this woman is the wife of Ovadia. Ovadia, if you remember, was the prophet that worked for Achav. Achav, the evil Achav, but he had a righteous uh, prophet that was in charge of his house named Ovadia. And what Ovadia did during the famine that happened in the story of Achav and Elisha and Eliyahu, he hid 100 prophets. There's even caves, 15 here, 15 there. He hid the prophets and he fed them. And he fed them throughout the whole period of the famine. Okay, and he was a very, very righteous person. Ovadia was, and then he passed away. Okay, and then what happened was Jehoram, the king of 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 Israel, said to his advisors, "I don't understand this. You know, I'm having a tough time. I'm not really able to be the king in the way I should be. My father, he was more evil than me, right? He had brought the other idols. He brought the Baal and the Asherah, and I'm a low level evil, and yet he was more successful than me." So he asked his advisors, "Why is that?" So they said the reason is because he, your father, had a righteous person, a prophet that was in charge of his stuff. And because of him, everything got blessed. Now, who was the righteous person? That was Avadia. Avadia was in charge of the different things. And what you have to do is you need to get these great holy people and get them to work in your, a part of your kingdom, and then you'll be blessed too. So Yehoram said, well, I got a great idea how to do this. Why? Because Yehoram actually lent the money to Ovadia to feed the prophets during the time. Ovadia came and asked for money. I don't know if Yehoram knew what it was for. I doubt he did. But I'm sure he didn't actually, because it says that no one said anything. So the king's son would have found out. He sort of told the king, but he borrowed money, and Yehoram gave him money, and he gave him money with interest, which is forbidden in Jewish law. Okay, question how even the borrower can't borrow with interest, but however it happened. But he gave him money, and he never collected the money, and he owed him money, but now the interest had really jacked it up. So what he did was, what Jehoram, the king of Israel, did is he went to Ovadia's wife and said, "Listen, your husband owes me money. I lent him all this money, and now with the interest sky high, pay it up." She said, "I don't have any money. Can't pay this." She says, "Okay, well, you have 2 sons, and I will take them to do the work of the kingdom." So the wife of Ovadia goes, "I can't do this. I can't give my sons to this evil person." She goes to the grave of Ovadia, and she talks to her husband there at the grave. Kabbalists tell us there's a certain aspect of the soul, nefesh, the headlet garmi, this aspect that remains connected to the grave of the person. Obviously, the soul goes to our place, but there's a certain lowest aspect that remains connected. And she went to his gravesite, and she heard a voice of her husband saying, "Okay, go to the prophet Elisha, and he will take care of you." Okay, so she goes to Elisha, and what did Elisha say to her? He said, "Listen, okay, she comes and says that my husband was, feared Hashem, and now comes along this the king of Israel trying to collect money and take my 2 kids. How do I give my kids to this idolater that he'll end up tricking them to serve idols?" So Elisha says, "Okay, tell me what do you have in your house? What do you own?" "Nothing. All I have is a little flask with a little bit of oil in it." He says, "Okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go and get as many vessels of oil as you can get. Gather them together, go borrow them from your neighbors, and take the oil that you have and pour it into the vessel that you own. And once it's filled, or the other vessels that you have, once it's filled, take another vessel, put it in, and just keep pouring. And that little bit of oil will miraculously keep pouring as you put new vessels in." And that's what she does. She goes, she borrows vessels. She gets a lot of tons of vessels, and she takes her flask of oil, she pours it in, and then that's filled up, and then this little bit of oil ends up just filling up tons and tons of vessels. Now, I need to explain that a little bit because it's a strange thing, and this is going to affect a little bit how you understand the idea of miracles, how they work, and what they mean. So there's a few points here that I want to clarify. One is that what does a vessel represent, and why does she need vessels? Okay, so like you have the oil, and I don't know, let just the oil just become a lot. What's the vessel for, and how does that work? So you have to understand something. The idea of a vessel means that a person is open and able to receive. If you don't create ourselves as vessels, we can't receive. A person who thinks they know everything is not open to getting other information because they believe they know everything. So to the degree a person makes themselves a vessel, they are open to receive these blessings. Okay? The prophets, that's one point. The prophets also, what they do is they go and take something in this world and they extrapolate on that. And I'll show you that a little bit more later, how that works. But at this moment, we have to understand is that if you don't have a vessel to receive the blessing of the oil, then how can you get it? So get yourself the ability to receive. And then the blessing can come, and that's what happened. So she had that tons of vessels, and then when she poured it in, the miracle could happen because now I have a place to receive it. This is true for everything. It's true in everything in life. Until a person is open to getting something, so all the blessings might be coming down to him, but there's nowhere to go, right? If a person thinks, no, I know, so then something's happening, you're not able to receive it. That's one point about this miracle. I'm talking about a few ideas about how the miracles work. The second thing was fascinating. He says, go into the room with your sons and close the door. And Rashi brings down there that it's the honor of the miracle to be done in a hidden way. Now, why is that? There's a few different answers to that. It would seem to be the opposite. Let it be done in a revealed way. And that's show more is a miracle. And the answer is because, at least one answer is because Hashem doesn't run the world with revealed miracles. The world's supposed to run according to its natural process that Hashem set up. Okay? So now what happens is that if you go and you flaunt that and you don't minimize the miracle, then it becomes obvious that Hashem is doing what he's doing. And that's not really the way it's supposed to be. The way it's supposed to be is it's minimized, and those that can see will see, and those that don't see. Okay, so that's what she does. She goes inside and she closes the door and she pours it, and it just flows out until they ran out of vessels. Now she's got a lot of oil. The price of oil then shoots up. Happens to be not an accident, but it happens to be at that time. And she says to Elisha, what should I do? She says, listen, sell the oil now, and you'll have enough money to pay off your debt and for you and for your children, really forever. This, and that's what she does. Okay. Fascinating. That's a miracle of Elisha. Now we're talking about another miracle that happens through Elisha. In verse 8, chapter 4. Now Elisha goes to another place. He goes to a place called Shunem. And there's a woman there who's called an Isha Gadola, a very important woman. Who this woman is a point of discussion. She's called the Shunamite from this place called Shunem, and there is a text that says she is the sister of Avishaga Shunamite, the beautiful young maiden who David had taken as his person that warmed him up. In the we saw in the beginning of book of Malachim. Now, it's hard to, I don't know if it means literally or means that, a descendant of that, because she'd be pretty old then, I would guess. It could be, I didn't calculate, could be it's literal, but it says it's the sister of Avishaga Shunamit. Sometimes when it says the sister or the same person, it could mean it's the same soul, it's the same, it's a relative, it's not, but it says she was the sister of Avishaga Shunamit, who was the woman in the very beginning of this book that when David was cold in his old age, so they brought Avishaga Shunamit and she warmed David. Okay, which means she had some kind of special spiritual component. It means she was just beautiful, because that wasn't the only factor here. And this woman now lives in this place called Shunam. And Elisha passes by this place called Shunam, where this very important woman lives. She says, the important one says to her husband, she said, listen, let's get the man of God, the prophet, to come and eat, to help, to give him a meal. And this is a very deep thing where a person goes and realizes a person that is a servant of Hashem, a Torah scholar, and various things, they want to give them the ability to get the experience, to make them, give them pleasure with their own property and their own things. And that comes a tremendous blessing from that. As we'll see, the blessing she's going to get from this, from the fact that she went to make the prophet Elisha, comfortable in her home and to feed him, it's going to be very big what's going to happen. So they go and they give him food. And then she says to her husband, this is a holy man, and he passes by here. Let's go and make for him a place that he could have in our house. And the discussions, it was an attic, and they closed it off. It was a room, and they split into two. But they made a room for him, and they put in the room a bed, a chair, a menorah, a lantern, table, and this would be Elisha's place. Whenever he passes by Shunam, he knows he can come stay with us. Okay, so that's what they do. The sages tell us that it's interesting. It's an interesting Gemara. Gemara says that those who want to benefit are allowed to benefit like Elisha. Elisha accepted this, and those who don't want to benefit from someone else, like Shmuel never took anything from anybody. It said when Shmuel, the prophet, would judge people, he'd take his whole world on his back. He had some kind of old ancient type of backpack, and he had his whole world with him. He didn't take from anyone. So it means that a person can take, I guess what the idea is, a person can take like Elisha. You have to be careful, because the principle is Sone matanos yichya. A person, it says in Proverbs, a person who hates gifts will live. There's a person, the Maharal explains, if somebody always wants to take, they develop a mentality as the taker. And then it's like you have a hole in your pocket. You look at the world you could take. So that a person shouldn't do. But obviously Elisha understood that he was giving her a certain honor by staying in her house, and therefore he did it according to the proper way, where he did take from her, but not because I need. He wanted to honor her, felt she was worthy of it, and he did stay in her house when he would pass by this area of Shunam. Now, so he says to her, okay, now listen, you've done a tremendous kindness with us. What do you need? And she says a line which is used in modern Hebrew today. It says that B'toch ami anochi yoshev. I sit amongst my people. I don't need you to speak to the king for me. I need to speak to I have my family. I have my space. I'm good. I don't need anything. Okay. Now, Elisha turns to his. He had an attendant. We're gonna see a lot about this attendant named Gehazi. There's the prophet and there's the attendant. So he says to Gehazi, well, okay, we got to find something to do for her. She doesn't want anything, she doesn't need anything, but, that's the proper thing. What can we do for her? So Gehazi says, listen, she has no children and her husband is old. So now Elisha says, okay. And this is, again, an incredible thing that a person on this level of prophecy can want, and Hashem will bring it into the world. He says, call her. And they call the Shunamite, this woman. And Elisha says to her, okay, by next year, in this time, you will be holding a child. You'll have a child. Now she says, whoa, hey, don't be telling me things that are not real. Don't tell me things that are not. not real. Now, there's different explanations. What did she mean? Why didn't she believe the prophet? So one explanation they say is like in the story of Sarah, when the angels said, they said, that you will be, we'll come see you next time and you'll have this child, and you didn't say you're gonna see me. So I don't know, how come it's not the way the angels said it? So he said, well, because I'm not an angel. They're angels, they can say they're going to be around. He says, as a person, he doesn't know if he'll be around. But he knows that next year you will have a child. Now she says, Al techazev, which don't I guess, mislead me. So, it would seem to be the simple explanation is don't say something that won't happen. But it's an interesting thing the way the commentators explain it here. It's more like I need this child to be a child that will live. Don't give me a situation where I get my hopes up and I have this child and something wrong with him. Okay, lechazev is someone when you are disappointed by something because you expect it to do something. So this child, if you're going to give me this child, okay, but let it be a tremendous thing that's going to be successful. Okay. So that's what happened, and she gets pregnant, and she has a child, like Elisha said. Wonderful, wonderful. He grows up, he goes out to the field with his father, and the text says one day, he says his head hurts. His father says, okay, bring him back to his mother. Goes back to his mother, and his head's killing him, and he dies. Now, the Shunammite woman, she does not say anything to her husband. She just says, okay, I need to go speak to the man of God. She doesn't tell him that the child has died. She takes the child, she puts the child up on the bed of Elisha that she has in the attic for him. And what happens is that so the husband goes, why are you going to visit the prophet? It's not Shabbos, it's not a holiday, like it's not Rosh Chodesh. Like there are times where you have to go visit your rabbi, your teacher. I think as far as going to visit him. Nope. She goes to visit Elisha. Elisha sees the woman. I'm just going to put the light on because the colors keep switching. So just hold on a second here. I see we're having some issues with the lighting here. So we'll take care of it soon. So now what happens is, so Elisha sees the woman coming, and he sends out his attendant Gehazi, and he says, go find out if she's okay. Ask her how she's doing. How's her husband? How's the child? Gehazi goes and says, how's it? And she goes, okay, I need to speak to the man of God. She comes in, and when she comes towards where Elisha is, she falls down and grabs on his feet. And she says, I said to you not to go and to disappoint me, not to mislead me. Now, when she falls on his feet, the attendant Gehazi pushes her away. It's not right. Why are you grabbing him? Don't touch him. Push him away. Elisha says, leave her. She's a person that is sad, and Hashem has concealed from me what's happened. I see she's distraught. I need to find out why, but Hashem has concealed it from me. So she says to him, did I ask the child from you? You came and offered it, and now the child is dead. So Elisha says, Hashem concealed this from me, but I got to do something here. He takes his staff, gives it to Gehazi's attendant, and says, go with the staff. Don't speak to anyone along the way. Just go sneakily, concealed, like we said before, the way miracles should be. Go and put the staff on the child, and he'll come back to life. Now, I want to speak about Gehazi a second. Gehazi, and these kind of people come up a lot in the story here. And we're going to see Gehazi's got a lot of problems, and eventually Elisha pushes him away very strongly. And safe to say, maybe push him away too strongly at the end. But Gehazi is like a guy who's serving the prophet, but he has some other agendas. The sages tell us when he pushed her away, when he pushed the Shunammite woman away, it says Bahadofa, he pushed her away, and the sages says he pushed her Bahod Yafya. When he pushed her away, he made sure to put his hands where they shouldn't have gone. in the place of her beauty, the sages say, place of her breasts. He pushed her there. So here comes along Gehazi, who's supposed to be like the attendant of the servant of the prophet, and he's pushing her away like he's, no, don't touch the prophet. And yet he does it in such a way where it is totally wrong. But it's like not seen. The text has to show us. I'm sure, people seeing it wouldn't have known what was going on. They think, oh, just pushing her away. The text says, no, Gehazi's got a problem. Something wrong with Gehazi. Similarly, when Elisha sends him with the staff to go and to put it on the child, the text says it doesn't work. Right? Gehazi, Elisha sends Gehazi, run ahead of us, we're coming behind you, do this. But when Elisha is going to arrive, the Gehazi was unsuccessful. He comes back and says it didn't work. Well, why didn't it work? That was the prophet said. So the sages tell us that what happened was when Gehazi was running around with the staff, he didn't do what Elisha said. He didn't go tzniusly, discreetly. He went and he told everyone, hey, I'm going to resurrect the dead with the stick. There's two ways that it's said. And Rashi seems to be said as if he's saying it like just maybe haughty, showing off. I'm going to do this, which ruined the idea of the way this miracle was supposed to happen, and a discreet way where it's hidden and the honor of Hashem is brought out, but only those who could see it. So in Rashi, it seems to be that he sort of did it, but in a way of showing himself off. Here I go, and I'm going to resurrect the dead with this stick. In the Medrash, it says that he was laughing at his master. He says, "Hey," he said to people, "Hey, you think this stick? My master says is going to resurrect the dead." Yeah, right. And he was melagleg. He was scoffing at it. So this Gehazi guy, who seems to be the attendant, he's got a different agenda going on. So that's why it doesn't work. So Elisha gets there, and Gehazi says, listen, I went there, and nothing happened. The kid is still dead. So Elisha says, okay, close the door, and he goes there. Now, what he does is, interesting thing, he says he lies down on the child 7 times, and he puts his mouth on his mouth, his eyes on his eyes. Okay, and now, just try to understand that a second, because I've seen some people say that this and Eliyahu Navi was like mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. That's not really what the sages say that the child was dead. But the question is then, what was the mouth on the mouth, eyes on the eyes? What was that about? So this is important to understand also in the ways of miracles, 2 different parts about it. One explanation is what he was doing was he was focusing to pray for the child. The more he connected to the child, the more the prayer would work. Like the story when Yitzchak is, praying for his wife. So his wife is there in the room, and it's helping him to have the intention for this child. So for his wife in the story of Yitzchak, and same thing by Eliyahu, by Elisha. He's with the child, and he's saying, Hashem, save this child, and this child, and he has. So that improves his intention of prayer. That's one explanation. The explanation is that there's some level of heat, maybe even of breath, that Elisha is providing. Now, why is that? If I'm saying it's not mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, why is that? And the answer is what we said earlier, that the miracles are supposed to have some element of a natural process that goes beyond. And that is the honor of the miracle, that it shouldn't be, generally speaking, it's not in a way that nothing happens. Something happens before. Those who understand it's a miracle see it's a miracle, and those who don't say, oh, something happened, Like when the Red Sea split, it says there was a tremendous wind that came. All right, so a normal person would see it's a miracle that the sea split. Someone who's not so, it was a unique thing. It was it was not God. It was some kind of a natural phenomenon. Right? There's a book by this person, a Russian scientist named Manuel Velikovsky, and he wanted to claim that the Red Sea split because Venus was too close to the Earth's orbit. He tries to demonstrate that, and that caused the pull of the ocean. Now I don't know. Maybe it's right. But that doesn't mean anything. The text itself says that God made the strong wind come. So those who want to think it's natural, think it's natural. Those who understand it's a miracle, it's a miracle. So that's another explanation here why he put his mouth on his mouth, his eyes on his eyes, and and then eventually the child breathes. He sneezes, and the child sneezed 7 times, or made some kind of sound where he was getting his breath, and he opens his eyes, and then Elisha gives the child to Gehazi and says, "Bring the child back to the Shunammite woman." Okay. And then she says, she falls down by his feet, and she thanks Hashem, and she thanks the prophet, and she takes her child and she leaves. Okay, again, another thing that the prophet's able to do to bring down to this world. Now we're going to see a few more small things the prophet did. I mean, this is a pretty big one, resurrecting the dead. I mean, we don't have too many people doing that. We have him and Elisha and Eliyahu. It's not a very common one in the stories of the Navi. But a few more things that Elisha did that were miraculous that the text wants to record. Okay, another one, then he was coming back from Gilgal, and there was a famine in the land. What happened was he took it upon himself to feed the other student prophets. And he tells Gehazi to go and to put out a pot and to cook food and to feed the students. And they were trying to gather stuff around. There wasn't much things. And one of the people gathered this type of growth in the field. Sometimes it's mushrooms, different things. But he put it into the pot, thinking that it was a good addition to the pot, not realizing that it was a bitter, poisonous mushroom, a poisonous substance. And when people started eating, they felt it was very, very bitter, and they felt it was poisonous, and they started screaming, "There's death in this pot!" And so that's a big problem because they would have died. And Elisha said, "Okay, take your plates, dump it back into the pot, add kemach, add flour, and eat that." And they did that. They eat the new stew that was cooked with the flour, and they were fine. Again, seeming a miracle. Why'd you need the flour? Why didn't you just say Hashem, let it be? But there was, as we see, the ways of the miracles are there's something happening in the natural world that is the catalyst of the process. Okay, good. Another miracle that he does. Then afterwards, as a person came, and we'll see why there was a lot of famines during this time. We'll get to that next week to see what was happening in the larger discussion. Now we're focused on his miracles. So a guy came along. He brought down a certain amount of barley for Elisha, and Elisha had many students there. And Elisha said to Gehazi again, he says, "Cook this up for the people." And he says, "Well, it's not enough for 100 people. This is like enough for you." Says Hashem said, "Cook it, and there'll be plenty left over." And that's what happens. He cooks it, and there's tons left over. Okay, now we're coming to another miracle that Elisha did, and this is already going to be a very important turning point in certain things that are going to happen. There was if you remember, we talked about a little while back the story of Aram. Aram was the northern kingdom of, not the Jewish kingdom, Damascus, that area. And they came, and there was a lot of wars between them and Israel. If you remember that Achav was killed in that war. If you remember last time we discussed that Aram had come to fight Israel, and he was told by the prophet that he would die, Achav would die. So he concealed himself, and he went with the king of Judah, Yehoshaphat. If you remember the story we learned there, and then we said that the Aram king said, "Don't go and fight against the people. I want the king of Israel. That's what I'm interested in." And then it says that an archer went and he pulled his bow and he shot one shot randomly into the camp of Israel. And unbeknownst to the archer, anyone else, he happened to hit the king Achav, who was concealing himself. Okay, now who was that archer? And commentaries talk about it. And now it's going to be revealed who that archer really was. The archer was the general of Aram named Naaman. Naaman was this general, and he was very, very important. They treated him as he was the most amazing guy. And the text says because Hashem had given success to Aram through this man. Okay, well, why? Because oh wow, one shot and he hit the king. The king was hiding. Amazing, we got what we wanted. So Naaman is a very illustrious general now, and people think of him as being, the top dog, so to speak. Okay. Now the problem is that he did think he was a top dog, and something happens. There was a disease. Now, question, we're talking about the spiritual disease or the physical disease here, but there's a disease called tsarat, leprosy, which comes about from various things. One of the things it comes about for is haughtiness. So Naaman thinks, I'm the amazing general, and Hashem plagues him with tsarat, with leprosy. Now, he doesn't know what to do. He can't get rid of his leprosy. Now, he had conquered in one of the skirmishes, he had conquered, he had a Jewish woman that was taken as a servant to his mistress, to his wife. So the Jewish woman said, listen, I see that the master Naaman can't get rid of his tsarat, his leprosy. So why doesn't he go to the prophet in Israel who does all these miracles? In the northern kingdom, in the Shomron area in Samaria, there's a prophet. And he does all these incredible miracles. We all heard about it. Why doesn't he go there? He says, yeah, good idea. So he goes to the king of Aram, and remember, this is the illustrious general Naaman. He says, I heard that in Israel they have the ability to heal. So the king says, good, okay, fine. Remember, there's a lot of wars between these two people, and the king of Israel is somewhat afraid of Aram because they keep starting up, and there's been back and forth, some wins and losses. So he sends a message to the king of Israel, Jehoram, and he says, I'm sending down my general with his retinue, and we have these gifts, and I expect you to heal him. I heard you guys could do that. So the message comes to the king, Jehoram, and he rips his clothes. Says, "What? This is a canard. What's going to happen? They're going to say, I'm not God. I can't make this happen. I can't get rid of his leprosy." So he rips his clothes and he says, they're looking for a war with us. Meantime, Elisha hears, I guess he hears prophetically, what the king, and he said, the message of the king, why are you going and ripping your clothes and doing this? Send him down to me, and we'll show him that there is God in the Jewish people, and there are prophets. And yes, we are at a different place than all you guys. Well, send him to me. So Naaman goes down to Elisha. Now, you gotta kind of imagine the story here. Naaman is this fancy general with his whole retinue and all his people, and is coming with the gifts for those that were going to heal him. If you heard, so he comes to Elisha, the prophet, the scholar. Elisha doesn't even go out to greet him. He doesn't go out to greet him. He's like, I'm impressed. He sends out his messenger, and he says to his messenger, okay, tell Naaman to go and to dip in the Jordan River 7 times. So Naaman gets irate. He says, what is that? I expected this holy spiritual man to come out and put his hand above me and do whatever he has to do to be able to get rid of the stress. And he tells me to go take a bath. There are better rivers up I have in my land than Aram. I clean those rivers all the time. I go dip in the Jordan. That's his advice. So his officers say, listen, if he would have told you to do something difficult, you would have done it. Now he told you something easy, maybe you should do it and see what happens. So they push him, and he goes. He dips 7 times into the Jordan River, comes out, and his skin is totally healed. And now he is blown away. He's like, oh, wow. This changed his whole view of things. He goes back to Elisha, and he comes and he says to him, I now know there is no God anywhere except for the God of the Jews. Okay, and now I can't believe what you've just done. I want to give you these gifts that I brought for you. So Elisha says, he takes a vow. He says, I'm not taking anything. I'm not taking anything from you. Now, it's a little funny, as we said before, that Elisha did take something sometimes, but I guess he felt here it was not the appropriate thing to do. Be an honor to Hashem not to take it. And furthermore, the commentaries say that Elisha said, anyway, his money is mixed in with idolatry, who knows what, the idolatrous things are involved, that's totally forbidden. I'm not taking anything. He's pushing, but take something. He says, no. And you don't argue with Elisha. Elisha's like, I'm not taking it. And that's it. But now Naaman's even more impressed right now because he sees that this person is a man of God, and he doesn't need Naaman. He's not impressed by his pompous arrogance, and he doesn't need his money. So Naaman says, "Okay, listen. I'm going to ask you one thing. Let me ask you one thing. I want to take earth from the land of Israel, bring it back to where I live, and build an altar for Hashem. And I'm never going to serve idols again." And Naaman becomes a ger toshav, I guess called a Noachide. Naaman becomes a ger toshav. That's the status they give him. It means he could live in the land of Israel. He doesn't serve idols. He keeps the 7 laws of Noach. And Naaman was completely changed. But he says to the prophet, I got one problem here. I said that there is a place called Beit Rimon, which is the idolatrous place. And when the king makes me go there, he leans on me, and I have to go bow down. Hashem should forgive me because I don't want to do that. And Elisha says, Lech Shalom, says to him, you can go and stick with what you're saying. That wouldn't be considered. I'm not sure exactly why it would not be, because it's forced, not we're praying to it. The various reasons why it would not be considered idolatry for Naaman, because he doesn't believe in it, he's only doing it from force, and various other explanations why it would be not something he has to give his life for. But Naaman asks that Hashem should forgive him for this because he now is only going to serve the God of Israel. Tremendous sanctification of God's name that this haughty general gets to see, and he realizes that now he's changed. And you got to remember, this is we're not talking about, there's no internet, there's no, this is like, okay, there's a place in the world called Israel. Everyone has their idols and their little gods, and when they start to see the truth, it's a tremendous thing. So for Naaman to go back and to be now acting differently in his place was a tremendous sanctification of God's name. Okay, but the problem is that Gehazi says, whoa, wait a minute. He was just offering us all this money, and my master, at least he didn't want to take it? What's going on here? And he makes a vow, I'm going to get it. So he goes chasing after Naaman, and he comes to Naaman and he says, listen, these 2 other prophets came, and we need some of the money now for them and some clothing for them also. So my master changed his mind, and if you can go and give it to us, then it would be very, very nice. It would be very helpful. So sure, I'll give you more, And Naaman sends his people back with Gehazi. Gehazi, when he gets close to the camp, he takes the stuff so he can hide it from Elisha. He doesn't want to tell Elisha what he just did. So he hides the stuff that he has, which is not really going to work with a prophet like Elisha. So when Gehazi comes back and he's very satisfied with himself that he took the gifts from Naaman, he has the money, he has the clothing, he has all these great things. So Elisha says, where were you? I wasn't any place. I was here. So he says, you don't know that my heart went with you. I know exactly where you were going, what you're doing. He says, and now because you did this, the leprosy of Naaman will stick to you and to your descendants forever. And we're going to see, there's a fascinating story later on that we will discuss about this children of Gehazi, and Gehazi, because they were actually lepers, and they had to live outside the camp. And we'll see what happens with them, which is a fascinating thing in terms of when somebody falls very low and Hashem may still bring redemption through them. We'll see that later. But Gehazi, who was the person who was the assistant to this great Elisha, when he had a problem inside of him, it's very strange because Elisha is the prophet, he should know. I think you have to say that Elisha did realize Gehazi wasn't, all that he should have been. But assuming, like in the story of with Yitzchak and Esav, he saw that there's something to pull him out with. But it doesn't go that way. And we'll see also the sages say at the point he pushed him out, it says he pushed him out too hard. And so the person should, when you need to push out the student, you got to do it with one hand. You mean the car of the right hand brings close, the left hand pushes away. And the sages will have a complaint against Elisha that he pushes Gehazi out too strong, and the negative things that would occur and may have been different if he would have pushed him out more gently. And that's a very fascinating reality that happens. We have another case like that happened in history, a few cases where people were pushed out too hard. One is brought in the Hashmatas. The Hashmatas are in the Talmud. There are some sections that were censored, but we have all those sections. We just kept them separate. But the Christians censored certain sections, and there's one section where it censored the story of what happened with JC. He was a student of Rabbi Shimon Parchia. He was a student of this rabbi. And what happened was, during the Roman persecution, they fled to Egypt. And when they came back, when they heard the coast was clear, they can come back and things were better in Israel, it says that Yeshua Parka and the student, JC, they came up and they stopped at an inn in Gaza. And then a woman came over to serve them. And the rabbi made a comment to his student about, like how her traits were so good. And JC misunderstood what the rabbi said and thought he was saying how nice she was physically. So he said to him, I don't like her eyes. Her eyes. So the rabbi got irate. He says, that's what you think I was talking about? He says, get away. You can't be my student. He pushed him away. And the text says that he came back once to say, take me back. No. Two, no. The third time, the text says that he was planning on accepting him back. But the Rabbi Yeshua Parachia was saying the Shema. Now, when he said the Shema, we cover our eyes. In those days, what they did was they would meditate, a while, because you're supposed to take on the yoke of heaven. And the Talmud says, if someone says it, blah, 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 and says it, it's like he's making God his friend. He's not really taking it on. So he would meditate, and he was meditating. And then when JC came over to ask forgiveness the third time, where the rabbi was planning on accepting it, he didn't answer. And so he said, yeah, you don't answer? I'll go out and I'll make my own things. I'll make my own interpretations. And that was a big turning point. The Talmud says in this point in history, obviously. Elisha, there's also a critique that he pushed him away a little bit too hard. And we'll see the stories of Gehazi later. But this portion we did from chapter 3, chapter 5, are the miracles that the prophet is able to bring down, including bring the dead back to life, and the sanctification of God's name that happens through these miracles. And the problem where somebody like Gehazi doesn't allow that sanctification, that Kiddush Hashem, to happen because of his own greed, and he ruins the potential greatness that was going to be in the world. Okay, have a great one. We'll see you next time.